Hi, it's Mr. Anderson, and in this podcast, I'm going to talk about photosynthesis. I love photosynthesis because it gives me two things that I need. I need to breathe, so it gives me oxygen, and I need to eat, and so it's going to give me food. And so I love photosynthesis. You might think it's only found in these things, plants, but it's also found in bacteria, and it's found in algae, and so it's found in protists. It's found everywhere. So photosynthesis has been around a long time. It's super important that you understand how it works. And so let's start with the side of NK aortic cells of photosynthesis, and that's the chloroplast. And this is a number of cells. See how many chloroplasts we could have in a typical cell. There are a few terms that you should be familiar with and where they are. First one is thylakoid membrane. Thylakoid membrane is going to be organized like this, and basically that is where the light reaction is going to take place. If you got a stack of theology like this, together we call that granum. The other big thing to understand is that it is filled with liquid, and that liquid is called the stoma, and that's going to be the site of the carving cycle. If we go round up a leaf, what we would find is that there are not only one pigment, chlorophyll A, that does photosynthesis, but there are a number of them that are working together. And so if you run up a leaf into some chromatography paper and then you put it in a solvent, what you get is chromatography separate into all of its different parts. And so this right I and chlorophyll B, and this would be like carotene and xanthophyll. Working together, you will see this other pigment in the fall when the chlorophyll moves back into the leaf and it is reabsorbed. But if we look at what light they absorb, A and here B, this is what they call their absorption spectrum, and they are able to absorb, and you can see that they are absorb a lot of the blue, a lot of the red, but they don't absorb a lot of this in the middle, this green. And so a quick question could be what is their least favorite color plants because of reflect that green light. Now this is actually puzzle scientists for a long time, and we really don't have a definitive answer to as why plants are green. That if they were black, they probably would get a little bit too hot. They would too much light. And so let's start with an equation because this is simply reaction. It's chemical reaction with a number of steps. But what are the reactions? Water and carbon dioxide. And so how does a plant grow? It's basically taking water in from its roots and it's taking carbon dioxide in through its leaves, through its stomata. The other thing is need is light, and so it's taking this simple ingredient and then it's weaving those together to glucose, this mantle molecule here, and then oxygen. And so this is a food that I get. This is the oxygen that I breathe. Now, plants just nice. No, they are making the sugar for themselves so they can break it down using cellular respiration. And in fact, if I put it around in the that becomes cellular respiration, so they are making food for themselves and they are also going to make some of the structure. So like the cellulose in the cell wall is made from that as well. Okay, so whenever I try to think that in photosynthesis, I always imagine this picture right here. They are photo and the world. Make photo means light and synthesis means to make, and so they are in photosynthesis, the light reaction, and those are going to take place in the membrane, and then the carbon cycle we use to call this the dark reactions, which is a silly term. Doesn't happen during the dark, it happens during the light, and so basically the person who worked this all out is Melvin Carbon, and so we name it after him. Where does this take place? The wetting it takes place in the stoma, and so let's try do a cartoon version of photosynthesis. What are the reactions? Again, water, light, and carbon dioxide. What are going to be the products that come out of this? It's going to be oxygen and glucose. So let's watch what happened. Dependent reaction, water and light go into thylakoid membrane, and they produce oxygen. Oxygen is simply a waste product, and then they are going to produce these chemicals, NADPH and ATP. So they have energy now. Let's watch what happens to them. Well, the energy is going to transfer to the carbon cycle where carbon dioxide comes in and then glucose goes out. So, and so this is big picture of photosynthesis. But now let's kind of dig in a little bit deep and talk about the light reaction. Okay, so where are we? We are in the thylakoid membrane. So we are in this membrane right here. So we are to zoom into that membrane right here. That's what the diagram is. What are the two things coming in? Well, the first one is going to be light. So coming in here, light coming in here. What's the next things that we are going to have coming in? And that's going to be water. Okay, so let's look at some of the other big features in this thylakoid membranes. So this is the outside, the stoma to be lumen or the inside. And so there's a couple of big things right here. What's in here? Well, there's basically going to be proteins with chlorophyll on the of it. And so we call that whole thing together a photosystem. So this called photosystem 2, and then we go to photosystem 1. And the reason we go backward is that the photosystem 1 I was discovered first. So basically, what that light used to do? Well, that light is used to power the movement of an electron through an electron transport chain. So that electron is going through protein, carry proteins, and even eventually that electron is going to go here, because remember that one of the product is of the light dependent reaction. Okay, what happens to the water then? So the water is going to be split right away. If you split water, what do you get? Well, you get oxygen. So that's O2 that's going to diffuse with a cell, and that's the oxygen that you are actually breathing in, going to have this proton with simply hydrogen have lost their electron. Okay, so this is getting kind of messy. Happen next, and as that electron moves through the electron transport chain, and again is powered by the introduction of light here and light here, that electron is going to be moving all the way down here, and every time it goes through one of these proteins, it's pumping protons to the inside. So it's pumping protons to the inside. Now protons have a positive charge. So basically what's happening is that you are building up a positive charge on the inside. So there's a positive charge in here. If you know how cellular respiration works, you will realize that it is opposite of that. So now you have charge on the inside. Where do they go? Well, there's only one hole that they can go through, and that is to go through the protein here. And the protons move out through a protein called ATP synthase, and it works almost like a little rotor. And every time a proton goes through, we make another ATP. So what we have made in a light reaction, we've made NADPH and we have made ATP. And what's nice about that is Kevin now it's just sitting here, right here in the stoma, in this process. And so who's providing the energy? Light. Who providing the electron? Water. And then a waste product of that is simply going to be oxygen. Okay, let's go to the Calvin cycle then. So what's happening in the Calvin cycle? You can see here those reactions. So we've got our ATP here and AT. and DPH. What are they providing? Providing simply energy. We have this module called RUP. Basically, it's 5 carbon molecule, and then we have carbon dioxide coming in. So it moves through the stomata of the leaf and it's going to go in. Carbon dioxide is one carbon molecule. So basically there's an enzyme that replicate and it's going to attach this one carbon molecule to 5 carbon molecule. It immediately breaks into 3 carbon molecules and then it gets energy from ATP and A, and when they are done, it creating this chemical down here called G3P. What does G3P become? Well, it can be jammed quickly into glucose or sucrose or maltose or whatever they need to do. That's going to be produced right in here by the G3P. So that's where they are synthesizing. In other words, they are taking carbon and we are fixing it. We're making it usable. Of G3P is released, but a lot of it is recycled again to make more of this wrap. And so that why it's cycle over and over again. What's a big picture? If we don't have ATP, if we don't have NADPH, then this process is going to shut down. Other thing that could shut it down if we don't have carbon dioxide. Basically, photosynthesis. It and again is being worked for billions of years. A slight problem, and that problem is called that photon respiration. Where photon respiration occurs only when we don't have enough carbon dioxide. Uh, let's be cross out that. Well, we certainly can't make our G3P, but something was happened. Oxygen can actually jump into the carbon cycle, and using radicals can form another chemical. Now that chemical does do anything. In other words, it has no purpose and the cells actually has to break down. And so as a result of that, plants and we call them almost all 3CP plants. And the reason we call them C3 plants, G3P is going to be a 3 carbon molecule. So for these C3 plants, photorespiration is bad. In other words, they don't get anything out of it, and so they're going to lose based on that oxygen kind of jumping into the carbon cycle, and so you might think evolutionary. Why would this have even evolved? Well, remember photosynthesis shows up first, and then oxygen in the atmosphere shows up much later, and so it wasn't a problem initially, but it's enough a problem. Another question you might think is um, when wouldn't we have carbon dioxide? Well, how do they get carbon dioxide? It's going to have a stomata and it's surrounded by guard cells. And so basically, open up its stomata, carbon dioxide can diffuse in. And so the only time we have carbon dioxide because we have tons of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It's actually closed. And when it would be closed in a plant, it's only when it's really, really hot and a plant doesn't want to lose water because low transpiration will constantly losing water. And so if you are plant, if hot day, you are have this really tough choice. If you open up the stomata, you're going to lose water. You could fill up if you choose it. You can't get carbon you are going to start doing proton respiration. And so, of course, nature has come up to this over time and it's only going to be found in plants. Environment, so here's first solution, and this total makes sense. Comes plants would be a jar plant or like a pineapple. Basically, what they do is they only open their stomata at night, and so at night they open up their stomata, and then the carbon dioxide will come in and they create malic acid to store it vacuolus inside the cells. Okay, so now when it's daytime, what they can do? is they can close the stomata because they don't want to lose water, and now they can actually take that carbon dioxide out of the malic acids and they can use it in the Calvin cycle to make sugar. So the great thing about plants is again they are only taking in carbon dioxide at night when it's cool, and then during the day they can close their stomata and then they don't lose water. Another example of this would be in C4 plants. What they instead of doing it day and night, what they will do is they will take in and they will actually use enzymes to make a four carbon molecule out of it. That four carbon molecule will move to some cells on the inside of the leaf called the bundle sheath cells. And then they can simply introduce carbon dioxide into carbon cycle here. And again, both of these solutions are basically taking carbon dioxide when they can get it, creating a chemical out of it, and then they can introduce that chemical into the carbon cycle, and they don't have to wait for carbon dioxide to diffuse in. Now, of course, there's going to be extra steps in here, so it's going to require, we only see this in areas where it's really, really warm, but an example of C4 plants that we will eat and use a lot. In fact, most of it are used made of out of this that's corn. And so that's photosynthesis. A simple problem is photorespiration, but I hope that's helpful. Thanks for listening.